The Traveller's League Book 1 The Timepiece, written by Nick Goss. Shadow World. Hoops left Miss Grankle's apartment feeling warmed inside by his new friendship and an eagerness to continue into the timepiece's next mysterious world. When he got back to his room, he took King Tut out of his cage and set him gently on his shoulder. He yanked the timepiece out of his pocket and set it to 3 o'clock. As he rubbed the lid, the electric glowing particles swirled around him. They moved faster and faster, moving closer and closer. Whoosh! Everything went dark, like someone turned off all the lights. Hoops opened his eyes, but everything was still totally dark. He rubbed his eyes and looked again. Same thing. Just sitting in the dark. He reached up to his shoulder and felt King Tut snuggling close to his neck. "Phew, I'm glad you're still with me, bud, eh?" Squeak! Tut jumped off his shoulder and scampered around. Mice can see in the dark, and Hoops knew this, so he wasn't afraid. "I guess you'll need to be my eyes, your majesty. Lead the way." Squeak! King Tut moved through the darkness, so Hoops walked in the direction of his mousy little squeaks. Every few seconds he would hear the mouse squeak and follow the sound. Hoops heard Tut to his right, so he turned and could barely see something. It was a huge opening with the night sky in the distance. As Hoops walked through the opening, he realised he'd been in a dark cave. As he came out, he looked up to see a dark blue night sky with stars and constellations he'd never seen in any of his books. The ground was rocky and sandy, and Hoops saw dead wood laying here and there. Turning around to look back at the cave, he discovered it was at the bottom of a giant rock wall. He was at the bottom of an enormous canyon, and it was darker than any place he'd ever been. The only light came from the stars. He plopped down on the dirt, crossed his legs, and thought. King Tut crawled up on his knee and then jumped onto his shoulder again. He curled up by Hoops's neck and shivered. "I know, buddy, it's so cold here." He wished he'd brought a jacket or a blanket. As he looked around, he saw all the dead, dry sticks laying around him. "I know, we'll go home and get some matches and build a fire, and I'll grab a flashlight too so we can take a good look at the cave." He pulled out the pocket watch and rubbed it. He went back to the 6:30 and sat on his bed when he opened his eyes. He ran to the kitchen and grabbed a big box of matches and a flashlight. He checked to make sure it worked, then grabbed a little hand mirror from his mum's dresser with all her makeup stuff. "This way I could watch my back while I'm exploring that cave." He dumped his schoolbooks out of his backpack and put all his exploring supplies inside. He also ate a sandwich and grabbed a handful of mouse treats for his majesty. Then he skipped back to his room, set the timepiece for 3 o'clock and vanished back to the shadow world. When everything went dark, he knew he was back in the cave. He pulled out the flashlight and hit the button. Nothing. Giving it a couple of shakes, he clicked the button a few more times, but the darn thing wouldn't turn on. Dang it! Once more he relied on King Tut to guide him out of the cave with his little squeaks. Once he was out of the cave, he gathered a big pile of dead wood and placed a ring of rocks around it. Striking a match, he took a quick look around at the cold grey sand and the rocky opening of the cave. It was strange. That tiny flame seemed extra bright in this shadowy black place, as if a flame hadn't been seen in this world for hundreds of years. The flame burned close to his fingers, so he quickly placed the match under the pile of dead wood and it ignited without any problems. The flames chased away the cold instantly, and the crackling fire lit the ground all around it. Hoops laid his backpack against the rock wall by the cave entrance and pulled out the mirror. He propped the mirror against the wall so he could see behind him and plopped on the ground again. The fire blazed now, but it wasn't too hot. In a way, he felt like he was camping out under the stars and wasn't afraid of being alone here. It was lifeless in this world. Nothing could survive here. It was just a dry, cold, dark, empty desert. And while loneliness was what he thought someone should feel in a barren place like this, he certainly didn't feel alone. "I'm glad you're with me, your majesty." he said to the little white mouse curled up on the ground in front of the fire. "I brought you some treats. Are you hungry?" He made the sign for treat and King Tut jumped up. "Squeak!" He tossed some treats here and there and King Tut would sniff around until he found them, then squeak again. Hoops tossed one over the fire. His Majesty ran around the fire and munched on the treat. The mouse was between the fire and the canyon wall, and as he munched on his little treat, Hoops froze. He couldn't believe his eyes. The light from the fire made not one, but two shadows of the mouse. The shadows were side by side, black and huge against the canyon wall. "So you lost your reflection, but got an extra shadow," Hoops told His Majesty. "Frick," agreed the mouse. He needed to write this down, so he yanked his journal from the backpack and made an entry. 3 o'clock world, the Shadow Realm. Rule 1. Light creates 2 shadows here. The world is covered in darkness and appears to be nothing but a desert. Hoops pondered the strange discovery and tossed another treat to Tut. This one landed right in front of the mirror. The mouse scurried over to the treat. As he did, one of his 2 shadows passed over the mirror, and Hoops saw something he never thought he'd see again. The reflection of his little mouse. The extra shadow created a new reflection, another amazing discovery for the journal. 3 o'clock world, the Shadow Realm Rule 2. The reflection of a second shadow creates a new reflection. Amazing! He jumped up, more excited than ever, and stood between the fire and the canyon wall. His own big black twin shadows followed his every move. Stepping sideways to the right, he made one of his shadows pass in front of the mirror. The reflection of his face looked back at him from the mirror, smiling from ear to ear. What a relief, and what an amazing discovery. 3 o'clock world, the Shadow Realm note. I used the additional shadow to restore my own reflection. Satisfied by all his new discoveries, he packed up all his stuff and placed King Tut on his shoulder. He decided to let the fire keep burning. Setting the timepiece to 6:30, he rubbed it and crossed back to his home world. When his eyes opened, he jumped off his bed and with a heart full of hope he dashed like a bolt of lightning into the living room. Facing the fireplace, he gazed into the mirror and laughed. His reflection had been restored.